As you said, Frost is our final map here for this best of 9 show match. All tied up at 4 games apiece in the top left-hand corner. Representing Team Liquid, it's the blue Zerg player. It is Snute. And in the bottom right-hand corner, with his back against the wall in Alterzim on our last map, he jumped on in and took it to force this ace match. From Evil Geniuses, it's the red Protoss player, HuK.
Tied 4-4. $300 for the winner, $100 for second place. You've all been able to vote in Twitch chat, by the way, and well, things have changed rather a lot, I'll have you know, Liaison. Aside from 14% of invalid votes, 58% are going for Snute, 27.9% going for HuK, and that is very different from when we started. When we started, it was more like 80% Snute.
I'm wondering where the invalid votes come from. Like, where was the difficulty in choosing either Snute or HuK?
I think it's people who keep putting things like vote lag, vote Twitch, vote Frodo.
Okay. Gotcha.
You do know about the Frodo thing, don't you?
Guys. Well done. Yes, of course.
Yeah, Frodo Potter. Of course, subs can actually spam my face with Frodo's hair and Harry Potter's glasses on. Because I embrace the joke, and I do actually find it quite funny.
You might as well, man.
Anyway, more about the game. 15 pull coming down from Snute here, and a Nexus first from HuK.
Yeah, and it's nothing we haven't seen before, right? It's both players are resorting to what they're most comfortable with, and Snute, if we remember on this game, on this map in game 1, he did force the cancel on HuK's very quick third. So the question is going to be, is HuK going to try for something similar? Is Snute going to kind of go for a similar timing, potentially expecting it? Or are we going to see something totally different like we just saw on map number 8, our second time around in Alterzim, where both players went for something they hadn't showed in the previous 7 games at all?
I am really hoping that it's actually Snute who throws out something a bit more unexpected, because I'd say throughout this series, HuK has been the person showing a lot more variation and adaptation in his playstyle. Snute has been, for the most part, quite constant. He's either been playing the very aggressive Zerg in terms of going for early pulls and stuff like that, or alternatively, he's been going for a Swarm Host / Roach Hydra composition. I'd like to see him really mix it up this game. But I think it'd just be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I'm not sure if we're going to see it. This is really interesting here from Snute. He takes his third base at about that 4-minute mark, as we talked about in the previous game, but it's towards his opponent in HuK here. What do you think about his decision?
It is quite an interesting one. How do you reckon it's going to play out, Liaison?
Honestly, I would kind of expect it to be piggybacked into some sort of aggression. Otherwise, I'm not sure why a Zerg player would want a hatchery towards his opponent ever, to be perfectly honest, so that the larva is a little bit closer. But you know, it's gonna be really interesting to see. The pressure can suddenly be put on HuK. It's a bit of a role reversal, but very fast Twilight Council coming down here from our Protoss.
So, last game we were talking about how it could be Blink, could also be Charged, could also be Dark Templar from this stage, because it is just so incredibly early. DTs are certainly an option that is available to HuK. Snute, I know early in the series, has been investing in Spore Crawlers, not blindly, but definitely as a precaution. To my knowledge, though, he has been doing that in the last couple of games, though.
Yeah, and he's pulled off of gas here as well in his main base, really looking to drone up and saturate his bases. How quickly he's going to put himself back on gas, which is pretty much right away after a short break there, and how quickly he takes the rest of his gases is going to be really interesting and kind of indicative of where his play is going to go. But right now, that Twilight Council has finished. There's 340 gas banked up. 150 of it goes into that Dark Shrine.
So DT's opening up, and it's going to be HuK again, mixing it up. He had quite a lot of success harassing with DT's late game on Outer and Frost the first time we saw them in this series, game 1 and 2. So it's going to be very exciting to see what happens, and HuK is going to be using this aggressive harassment-style DT play to basically secure a third base, give him map control and dominance. But the money scout!
Yeah, he's going to try, I was going to say, Madals, but it's not going to be too surprising here for HuK, for Snute, as that Overlord flies right on over pretty much every single tech structure that he has right now. As Zealot gets pushed away at that third base, and, well, again, as you mentioned, immediately the layer comes down at the natural, some Spore Crawlers go into the mineral lines. And any hopes, really, that HuK had of doing some aggression with those DTs and really getting a lot of damage done, it's pretty much gone out the window.
It's going to be really interesting to see what Snute decides to do off the back of this, because he doesn't know about the third base of HuK. So he's seen this Dark Shrine and probably sits there and thinks, okay, I've got quite lucky here. I've seen what my opponent was planning, something a bit sneaky, but without seeing that third, has he actually thought he's found the secrets without actually getting the entire picture?
You know, I think when he sees it all, I like to think that Snute is better than someone like myself, for example, who would just kind of say, oh, it's DTs, I'll prepare for DTs. He knows the Twilight Council is still there, and the options are there for aggression in that regard. And I'm sure that, I mean, he'll have some response for it. Obviously, the Roach Warren's coming down, it's finished. It's not going to do great against the Immortals coming out, but again, it's not like this is super all-in potentially coming out from HuK. He's got his third base down. He's got some gateways coming out right now. 4 more on the way to go with the 2 that he's got, but wow, really fast infestation pit here. Both players really seem to be, well, Snute seems to be accelerating his build order a little bit, whereas HuK does seem to be pretty content to put on some aggression potentially.
Well, Snute knows about that third Nexus. He knows he scouted the Dark Shrine, so the DTs aren't going to cause him any threat. Ultimately, that says to Snute, I'm safe for the moment. I'm not going to die to anything short term, so I want to drone heavily. He's gone up to 74 drones already, and just try and get to that mid-game as fast as I can, because that's what my opponent has done by getting that third Nexus. He's got the economy to get out a very sizable force. But look at this. Swarm hosts are definitely on the cards very, very early on in this final map.
Yeah, and if HuK isn't careful, it's going to put the brakes pretty severely on anything that he's got planned here, as he's got +2 coming out for weapons and Blink finishing up. But yeah, these Swarm hosts, I mean, we saw Snute use them just to perfection, I would say, in our first game. Seems like so long ago, just 3 or so hours ago. Right here on this map in game number 1, he used them brilliantly, and you don't need 36 necessarily to make them useful, right? But that's how many he did have. I think if he gets up into the mid-20s as far as Swarm hosts are concerned, he'll be just fine.
It depends how he uses them, because Snute hasn't been going for what is quite a typical use of Swarm hosts, which is just to group them all up, rally them towards your enemy or to where you want to defend, and hope for the best. He's actually been making kind of small squads of Swarm hosts, groups of about 10 to 12, and using those. Some have been aggressive, some have been defensive, and that's made it very difficult for HuK to kind of try and be everywhere at once, especially when he started to take more expansions. But likewise, HuK was able to be incredibly proactive with harassment, dropping, multi-prong attacks, and managing Snute's expansions. So this really is going to be a battle of who is able to hold those fringe bases, and with these DTs coming in towards the 4th, it's starting off looking good for HuK.
And there are no Overseers over by this base right now. You see kind of the hug coming from the drones trying to save surface area, but with 3 DTs chomping away, down it goes just as the Spore Crawler finishes. The Warp Prism does fall, but you got to think the DTs did the damage they needed, and more importantly almost than killing off that base, it allows HuK to complete his transition into double Colossus production, and he's actually getting Warp Prism speed and then Observer speed before he's getting his range for his Colossi.
This is a very, very interesting decision. HuK, by taking out that 4th base, has obviously secured himself a position where he's going to be a base up on his opponent for a while, which as a Protoss player, as we've seen multiple times tonight alone, is fantastic for him. But if he buys, or lets Snute have too much time, he gets out that massive Swarm host, and he has had some difficulties with it. If we reflect back on game number 1, that was precisely what happened. He gave Snute enough time to get up a lot of Swarm hosts, and despite denying bases left, right, center, he couldn't deal with those Swarm hosts head on.
We have an army from HuK coming around the left side of the map here. There are about 5 Swarm hosts here to try and deal with this. It's going to force the army back, but he's making a few Swarm hosts at a time still. The Hive, though, is finishing up for him, so it doesn't look like he might be stuck on this Swarm host heavy play, but he's at least opening up transition possibilities for him, or at least the tech path to go for those Vipers.
The Vipers are going to be essential, but this is another great variation from HuK. He's adding in 3 Stargates. That means Voidways again, and if you reflect back to Outer Rim, the second map, where HuK was able to take his first victory this evening, it was thanks to those Void Rays. That is how he countered this mass swarm host style, and it worked so well for him. I'm stoked to see how this game goes right now.
And the one thing I will say is it's a little bit easier on this map, I think, for Snute to defend these 4 bases. But after these 4 bases, and this is again in comparison to Alterzim, but after those 4 bases, we've talked about this before with this map, it's kind of difficult as a Zerg player to really feel secure everywhere on more than 4 bases.
It is, and HuK, even with just those 4 bases of Snute to deal with, has been doing a fantastic job of denying them throughout the evening. Again, we're seeing a couple of Zealots warp in towards this third, forcing some swarm hosts across. It may only get a little bit of damage, but when HuK has been a base up for a while, he's comfortable just sitting there and saying, I can throw away a handful of minerals.
Yeah, and he's getting a fleet beacon even behind this as well, so it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing Void Rays necessarily here. A lot
it could
more
just
gateways.
Be for the additional air upgrades.
This is true, but yeah, and there are the 3 Void Rays coming out, so perfect. I don't know. I like the Void Rays. I really do. I just wonder if Snute, upon seeing them, will have anything that they'll be able to do, or have a just sort of a transition in mind.
Some good force fields coming down above Snute's 4th base, but simultaneously Zealots dropping into the main. There's 3 swarm hosts here to defend that, but this is a lot of Zealots. They could get a nice amount of damage done. The army outside the 4th is having to pull back at the moment, but in the main, some drones are starting to meet their demise.
And this is really, really nice again for HuK. He's taking what he can here. The pull on the War Prism will almost take it down. There, it does go down to 1 Spore Crawler shot, but HuK continuing to move around the far side of the map as well, taking down some Creep Tumors, trying to take a couple Swarm Hosts with him. He does get them, which is nice. A nice little victory as well. But here come more Zealots down at the 3rd base. And Spine Crawlers being made in response, but the first few Void Rays are now heading on out onto the map.
The important thing is that HuK, while these trades aren't particularly cost effective for him, he is able to buy himself time, and time is paramount because he wants to get those Void Rays out. The Void Ray count currently at 3. That is not enough. Oh my goodness, he's adding in Graviton Catapult. Is he actually going to go carriers in Game 9 of this best of 9?
I sure hope so.
That makes you a hero. Like, instantly, that just makes you... That makes you go-to tier just because you've made carriers.
Yeah, and this is actually really nice too from these Void Rays. Just killing creep, just doing little things around the map and pulling these armies, around here. We see the main brunt of HuK's army pushing back up towards the top side of the map. The Void Rays sweeping in, killing off more creep. 3 more Void Rays joining the fray here. Stalkers blink down onto this mineral line. They are wreaking havoc down to 57 and now almost around 50 here. Drones, it keeps going down, so I can't actually say. Number 52 it's stabilized at finally. He was up over 80 just a few moments ago and actually forced to make more now. 9 more drones about to pop out, and man, fungal growth coming out, the pathogen glands for the infestors, I should say, coming out earlier than that game on Alterzim, which we kind of talked about as a possibility for Snute to get back in that game that he never quite used. But, it's a tough spot. HuK playing absolutely awesome.
He is about to face a bit of pressure, though, from these swarm hosts. They've moved across the map. Locust running in towards that 4th base of HuK. Not going to be able to do too much, though. The cannon's buying a bit of time. The Void Rays are there as well. The important thing is that, ultimately, we've now got HuK in a situation where he's able to deny that 4th base yet again from Snute, who's still got a decent bit of mining at his main still, so isn't too worried about the 4th yet, but already showing that he's got that capability to keep denying expansions.
And their War Prism's kind of all over the place right now on this map. There are 3 of them, one kind of sitting by the Spore Crawlers, another one in the main base, and another one over outside the 4th over a few
HuK's right going in here. He's moving straight towards this big group of Swarmos. The Void Rays are all there. Good abducts come down. One of the Colossus will die. A second one going to fall as well. The Voids engaging against these Queens and also the Spores. They're going to have to back out. HuK very brave with that engagement, but the Locust buying enough time.
Seemed a little bit desperate as another pull comes in and Queens and a couple Spore Crawlers pick off those Voiders. I'm not sure if he needed to engage there. He lost a lot. I think he underestimated how many Queens might have been there with transfuses. I mean, transfuses, stuff just doesn't die when it gets transfused. It's the most frustrating thing playing against it, but HuK's got to know better than that, to tell you the truth. And now You see, it's bought time for Infestors to come on out, and he's really pressured to try and do stuff with this Warp Prisms, but with Spore Crawlers everywhere, picking them off is turning into, well, a bit of a fun game here for Snute as well, as now just one remains on the map.
Snute is dealing with these Warp Prisms a lot better now. It's more like a game of whack-a-mole down the arcade, as opposed to him actually having much difficulties. And in come the mass Spore Crawler push. HuK is getting closed down in his movements. Moving forward now before those spores can get up. A lot of Void Rays are here. There's 11 in total.
Oh, fungal growths.
That is a massive fungal. The chain fungals aren't coming down yet. The queen's transfusing effectively. The spore crawler is getting taken down. Still the queens trying to push forward, transfusing each other. The voids getting the damage out as quickly as they can. The energy on those queens getting a lot lower.
Yeah, the queens finally look like they've run out of energy. There are still 7 Void Rays here raining down, but Spore Crawlers do finish, and these Void Rays are going to have to run. I don't think they can even engage that, as Prismatic Alignment does kind of wear down for them. One queen does pick off one more Void Ray. 5 of them do remain, and oh, really nice positioning for these Swarm Hosts right behind these Spore Crawlers over here.
This is very, very tense now. The Void Rays with Prismatic Alignment can engage up against these spores once more. They've got +2 attack as well. Even some micro coming down on those Void Rays. The Swarm Hosts unburrowed, but because they're armored, they are going to take an absolute beating. Quick warping of units from that Warp Prism will help chase down a few more. But HuK loses his 4th base in exchange for that. The Colossi will clean up the rest of those Locusts. This game is proper nail-biting.
Yeah, it's all over the place right now. We've got HuK taking a base at the top right. We've got a base pretty much right next to it being taken by Snute right now. Neither one knows about the other. HuK trying to push forward. 7 High Templar warping in. No energy for Storms just yet. Feedbacks are what he's going to be looking for on these Infestors, or just Archons being morphed in. Huge Fungals going down on the brunt of this army, and he does, it seems, have energy, at least for now, to try to chain it. But with Colossi coming in, there are 4 Colossi with this army raining down on all of this force here. It's going to be tough for Snute to try and hold this position. His units are trapped behind the queens. The Infestors do get out just barely, but if we look at that Swarm House count, it is below 20 now.
It is just getting crushed. HuK is moving forward. The Infestors are out of energy, and the Void Ray count is still insane. 11 of them there, 4 Colossi, and the 2 Archons pushing on forward. Snute is in a whole world of hurt at the moment, and he's just scrambling to try and get out anything to deflect this push that HuK is aiming to win with.
It's been back and forth for 9 games here between these two players. Snute took the first game on this map. HuK up 20 supply, a few abducts to try desperately to get these Colossi. Well, they're coming down here, but is there just too much Protoss here? There are more and more Infestors coming down. 14 Swarm Hosts remain. The Spore Crawlers, though, going down rapidly. Infested Terrans being thrown out here, and HuK continuing his march on forward. He's pretty much out of money, though. His bases have not been reestablished. He is mining with 7 probes at the top right. He needs to win now if he's going to win this best of 9 show match. The Queens transfusing. The Spore Crawler, it falls 106 supply to 98. HuK down 20 army supply here. The Vipers recharging on energy.
It's tense. It's crazy. The trouble is, Snute is doing everything he can. There's not much of this army left. He's desperately clinging on to this game. Is he going to be able to do it? If he loses with this map, obviously he's lost the show match. HuK knows that he is just on the brink of victory, but Snute doing everything in his power, bringing in those Spore Crawlers. 1 Void remains, the 2 Archons, the 1 Colossus, the second one in the Warp Prism. This is so tense, Liaison.
This is absolutely insane. 89 supply to 66. The army supply equalizing a little bit. HuK sending probes up to that top right base. He knows how important it is to reestablish some semblance of economy. He also knows he can't really leave this engagement right now. A few more abducts get pulled onto these Colossi, pulling them in range of the Spore Crawlers. Actually, one of them escapes up onto the high ground there for a moment. These Archons, though, seem to be dealing the brunt of the damage. You can't target those with Spore Crawlers. They take down some Vipers. There's only 1 Viper and a Swarm Host left on the map. 4 Queens do remain, but I don't know, Madals. It looks like HuK's done it.
It is so close. These 2 Colossi only have 35 HP between them. Some Spine Crawlers trying to prod and poke away. The Archons just doing everything they can. The pick up and drop micro is top 3 control here from HuK, if I do say so. But
counts on these Colossi.
This is insane. 96 and 63. These 2 are heroes.
I mean, they're more than heroes, right? That's crazy. GG is called. HuK takes game number 9 and the best of 9 series in what, I guess by percentages based on the voting mechanics that we've been using, is an upset here. 5-4 is the total. $300 go to him. Snute gets the consolation 100 in this $400 show match.